A lot of people go through the time and the expense of creating a living trust and then completely forget the most important step, which is funding it. Funding your trust simply means transferring assets into it, making sure your home, your bank account, your investment accounts are actually owned by the trust. Without that step, your trust doesn't control anything. It's like buying a suitcase for that big river trip, but never packing anything inside. In this video, I'll explain why funding your trust is essential, what should be included, common mistakes to avoid, and what steps to take to make sure that your trust actually works when your family needs it. One of the biggest misconceptions I see is the idea that once you sign your trust, your estate plan is done. But here's the truth. A signed trust that isn't funded is basically an empty box, legally binding but holding nothing. If you haven't transferred your assets into the trust, then your trust cannot manage them. That means if something happens to you, whether it's incapacity or it's death, your trustee is left having to track down these assets and get them into the trust. This creates delay, confusion, and extra legal work. And more importantly, some assets may not be able to be transferred at all after you're gone. If these assets aren't properly titled in the name of your trust, your family may be forced to go through probate to access them, which is exactly what your trust was trying to help them avoid. I've seen cases where a simple oversight, like forgetting to transfer a bank account or retitle real property, ended up costing families thousands of dollars in court fees and months of unnecessary delays. This is why funding your trust isn't optional. It's the step that actually makes the plan work. When your trust is properly funded, everything works the way that it should, and your family gets the full benefits of your planning. First, you avoid probate. This is one of the main reasons why people create a trust in the first place. When your assets are already in trust, they can be distributed directly to your beneficiaries without having to go through the court process. This means no delays, no public process, and no extra legal fees for your beneficiaries to get what's already theirs. Second, you maintain privacy. Probate is a public proceeding, meaning that anyone can access information about your estate. A properly funded trust keeps things private, which is especially important for families that value discretion or want to protect sensitive financial information. Third, you stay in control. The trust reflects your instructions, who gets what, when, and how. But if your assets aren't inside the trust, then these instructions don't apply. Funding the trust ensures that your wishes are actually followed. Fourth, it provides continuity if you become incapacitated. If you're alive but unable to manage your finances, perhaps due to illness or injury or death, your trustee can step in and manage your assets immediately. There's no need to go to court for a conservatorship or to fight over decision making. And finally, it keeps the administrative burden low and the costs down. Trust administration is smoother and far less expensive when the assets are where they're supposed to be. It makes life easier for the people that you've chosen to carry out your plan and helps them avoid mistakes. So what exactly needs to be funded into your trust? First, real estate. This includes your primary residence, rental property, even a vacation home. Real estate is one of the biggest assets that left outside the trust can trigger a probate. So making sure that the deed is retitled in the name of the trust is imperative. Next, bank and investment accounts. Checking accounts, savings accounts, certificates of deposit, and brokerage accounts can all be retitled into the name of the trust. This ensures that your trustee can manage them if you become incapacitated and that they pass smoothly to your beneficiaries later on. Then, business interests. If you own a business, whether it's a sole proprietorship, a partnership, or shares in an LLC or corporation, these can often be transferred or assigned to your trust. For business owners, this step is key in keeping the business running smoothly if something should happen to you. And let's not forget personal property. Some personal assets can be transferred to your trust through a general assignment. Retirement accounts like IRAs and 401ks can generally be handled through beneficiary designations. Life insurance and some investment accounts also work this way. Instead of retitling these assets into the name of your trust, you simply name an individual or your trust as the beneficiary. It's important to make sure that your beneficiary designations align with your overall estate plan. The key takeaway is that every asset needs to be accounted for one way or another, whether that's through trust funding or beneficiary designations. Even when people understand the importance of funding their trust, there are two big mistakes that I see over and over again. The first is forgetting newly acquired assets. Maybe you funded your home, your bank accounts, your investments into the trust. But then you buy a new rental property, open a new bank account, or inherit assets sometime down the road. If these new assets don't get titled in the name of the trust, they can end up triggering a probate. Keeping your trust funded isn't a one-time project. It's something to revisit every time your financial picture changes. The second is assuming that a pour-over will solves everything. Yes, a probate will directs that any assets outside of your trust should be transferred to it after you pass away. But here's the catch. If those assets aren't already in the trust, the only way to get them there is through some sort of court proceeding like a probate. So while the will eventually gets those assets into the trust, it defeats the purpose of avoiding court in the first place. The bottom line is your trust only works if it's current and fully funded. Otherwise, your family may end up facing the exact challenges that you were trying to prevent. A trust only works if it's fully funded. Think of funding as the key step that makes your planning effective, the part that ensures that your family is protected and that your wishes are honored and that your loved ones don't end up in court fighting over avoidable issues. So here are your next steps. Review your assets and confirm that they're titled correctly. Update your trust whenever your life or your finances change. And if you're not sure, reach out to an attorney for a trust funding review. I offer consultations to walk families through this process, making sure your trust is complete, current, and ready to do its job. If it's been a while since you've looked at your plan, now is the perfect time to schedule a review. So click the link below and we'll talk soon.